G'day everyone and welcome to my art channel Brushes with Beck. Today's video is a follow-on video from 2 weeks ago where I drew this little lesser sand plover that you can see on one side of the video here. And for this image I actually wanted to complete a partial background for it as well, and including some of the water underneath the plover. So that's what this video today is about, is basically how to draw water, but not so much how to draw water because this is only my first time doing water like this since I was a teenager, so it's been quite a while since I drew water, and so it's not so much a how-to as a how I went about drawing water in this video. So settle down and I hope you enjoy it. So really first up for this is I wanted to get my sort of horizon line straight, work out where I wanted my water to end in the background, and also to map in the rock that was in the scene, and then find some major points to begin with, major areas of distinct colour, and start in that spot. So that's what I did in that bottom left corner, is I started with that really dark area of water. Now water is really tricky, and I found this very challenging because we've all seen water so many times. You've probably been to the beach, or you've been to a river or a lake or a stream, or, you know, water's in the bathtub, in the swimming pool, in the fish pond, but it can look very different depending on A, how it's behaving, and B, what your light source is like. So if it's an overcast day, your water isn't really going to look blue, it's going to look grey or brown, or, you know, it's an assortment of colours. And the same here, it was a sunny day, so the water is blue, but there's also brown because it's reflecting off of rocks as the waves are turning towards some rocky areas. So there's a lot of factors that come into play when drawing water. So I just went with, I found those large focus areas of like block colour that I could get in, and then I could map in smaller details around that. So that's what I did. I started with that dark brown area where the wave was curving over and reflecting off of some rocks. And I thought, you know, I'd just dive in there and see how it goes. And from there, I was able to build up colour around it, lay in a lot of blue, and then overlay colours over that blue, like some darker blues, some purples, some browns, and really get those differences in colour tone and value for the ripples and the curves of the water, for where it reflects off of different objects, and the direction which the water is facing also changes how bright or dark that tone is. So that's enough of me ranting about that, but that's basically sort of how I approached it. And it was very difficult because I like to think I know what water looks like, but I don't really, because I don't know how to draw it. So I have to follow my reference. And in my head's saying that water is blue, but a lot of the time it's really not blue. So it was really hard to fight that urge to just constantly be drawing blue. And even after I completed this, I could already see things that I should alter or improve upon for next time. Like, I think I have too much light blue in this water and I need to darken it up to really get it a bit more rich, because it's a bit too pale, in my opinion, in the finished piece. And that's just part of the learning process. I learned a lot along the way. I feel like I managed to capture the water reasonably well because I followed my reference photo as close as I could, while having a little bit of artistic liberty because I was sort of fading the water out at the background. So I did include this rock that's in my reference photo. In my photo that I took, this rock is actually on the right hand side, just sort of behind and below the plover's tail, but I didn't really like how that balanced out in the image, so I brought the rock over to this side to kind of balance out the image a little bit better. I don't draw a lot of rocks, so I'm not overly pleased with the result of this one, but you know what, I gave it a go, it looks okay, so, you know, good practice. So overall, the piece came together pretty well, but like I said, I can already see some things that I would have improved upon. But like I said, the main thing was just sticking to my reference as much as possible, looking for where the colour changes were, whether it was a sharp edge of colour change or whether it was like a gradual blurred edge of colour change. And that's important to note too, because those sharp and blurred edges can really help define the shape of the water and how a wave looks, as opposed to just having all the color changes blurred or them all sharp. So that's really, really important to keep in mind, is that you take note of not just where those color changes are, but how blended out they are or how sharp and abrupt they are, because that can make a big difference too. So I did learn along the way, and I sort of went bolder as I went along with a few things here and there. But overall, just working my way through it slowly and, like I said, trying to map in those little details. I didn't follow, towards the level of the rock and further back. I didn't follow all those fine little wave lines exactly, but I sort of tried to map in some of them and then sort of just give an impression of the rest of them, if that makes sense. In the foreground, I tried to follow that as close as possible, and then further back, like I said, I took a bit of artistic liberty while also following my reference photo. So absolute learning process, but absolutely worth it, because I could probably do water again, but certainly do it better next time with less trouble. So working across the piece here, on this side, you can see there's actually some of that orange reflected in the water that is on the plover's feathers. And that's really important to note as well, and those reflections aren't always going to be in the place that you expect them to be. So that's one really important aspect of following a reference for water, is that it makes it so much easier to get those reflections accurate. If I didn't have this reference photo, I certainly wouldn't have put those reflections probably in those locations or as they are. And I probably just would have gone with like more of a flat surface of water that was easier to color than using waves. So that's pretty much, my approach to this. Like I said, was sticking to that reference. I had a bit of trouble getting some of the color depth that I wanted and covering the paper grain, because this is actually, I didn't mention, this is Canson Mi-Teintes paper that I'm using. This is the reverse side, the fine grain textured side. I'm using a combination of Faber-Castell Polychromos and Derwent drawing pencils for this. So I had some trouble covering the grain because I didn't want to apply too much colour in some areas, and I didn't really find I had some of the muted tones that I wanted in blues, because a lot of the blues are very vibrantly coloured, and I was after sort of more of a darker blue that wasn't so vibrant, if that makes sense, as opposed to a pale blue. But I suppose that's what you're supposed to make and mix colours yourself. But I felt like I found myself wanting for a shade of blue that I didn't really have. So I just had to, like I said, mix my colours. I was layering light blue, brown, purple from the Mars Violet from the Derwent drawing range, and sometimes a little bit of a greeny blue, and just to get all those variations in colour in. And for many of these highlights where you see me using that very pale pencil, that is not white, that is Cool Grey 1, because I didn't want to go with bright white, because some of this is just sort of foamy water, so it's not vividly white, though there are a few bright white reflections here and there. So that's really it for this video. I know it's not super informative because, like I said, this is the first time I've done water properly in a background for a piece. So it's as much a learning experience for me as it probably is for you guys if you're watching this for how to draw water. But I do hope you've gotten something out of it all the same. If you have a reference photo, definitely use your reference photo and go by that. It's very challenging to do water without a reference photo unless you've done it lots and lots of times. So I certainly recommend always using a reference photo for water because it is very challenging. And especially with those reflections, like I said earlier, to get them in the correct place to make the water look convincing. But anyway, that's enough rambling from me. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I do hope you like the finished piece too of the plover with the water. I found it's a bit better to make something that's set into a background rather than just a bird on its own for once. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Please comment down below, give the video a thumbs up, and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you next week for another video. Stay creative.